So when games are made, they're filled to the brim with a whole lot of stuff, such as the big levels you get to explore, or maybe the diverse set of characters you get to meet, a whole lot of differently distinct soundtracks to listen to, or even little fun things like bonus areas or Easter eggs. But once again, the bottom line here is that games have a lot of stuff for you to see and experience within them. And unless you're gunning to see every single pixel the game has to offer, you're probably gonna miss some stuff, whether that be due to a handful of reasons, like just simply not wanting to play a game anymore, or maybe losing access to it, or as we saw in part 1, not being able to beat certain parts of it because it was too difficult. But anyway, I'm back here today to talk about more things that I didn't get to experience in games when I was growing up, whether that be for one reason or another, which I suppose for today's video the big reason would be stuff that was out of my hands. As we start off here with my first one of these, not being able to play Call of Duty World at War Zombies in multiplayer in its kind of prime. And well, World at War specifically is remembered as one of those unique titles in the Call of Duty series, as the one with the very brutal campaign, as well as the one that started off the whole zombies phenomenon. And I believe it's my first Call of Duty. It's definitely the first of the modern ones I played. And because of it, as well as Black Ops 1, I definitely see myself as more a Treyarch fan than Infinity Ward. And since I was such a big fan of them in this game in particular, this whole entire thing happening to me really sucked. So what exactly happened? Well, I distinctly remember on a game of Verrucht, I was playing with other people, and well, this is why I say this wasn't in the prime of the game, because one of those people happened to be a hacker, which the older Call of Duties, especially World at War, is like infamous for having them infest the entire thing. And well, this asshole decided to D-rank everyone in the lobby. And what I mean by that is that it basically put you under level 1, with like negative XP amounts. And well, you know, it would be one thing if it was like, oh, I can't rank up anymore or whatever, and not be able to unlock new weapons and perks, because at the very least I would still be able to play online matches. But once this happened, I lost access to multiplayer. It wouldn't let me search for anything, due to me not being the correct rank. And then to add insult to injury, this was the same with zombies, since the multiplayer ranking system is like carried over into the game mode, and thus I was completely locked out of playing anything online related with this game. So then I guess that brings up the question, did I ever gain access back to the multiplayer in zombies? And I suppose looking back, the easiest solution would have just simply been to get onto a second account and start playing it, but I probably didn't think of that because I'm not a multiple account person. I make one and try to stick to it. Well, that, and I wasn't going to pay for Xbox Live Gold for 2 accounts just for one game once the free trial ran out. So then that leads me to my actual solution that I had many years later. That being the fact that although I couldn't search for matches, I could still like join lobbies and then have the person who's hosting the lobby search for matches and not drop out. And so with this idea, I got together with my friend who helped me look for a modder. And once we found one, we asked if he could re-rank me. And well, he not only was nice enough to do it, but he also made me max prestige. And well, from that point on, I was finally able to look for a multiplayer match or a zombies match online with nothing to worry about. Although in the end, I suppose this was unfortunately nothing more than a Pyrrhic victory, since by the time I got this fixed, the game was more dead than it was when it happened. Although I guess I am just simply happy that I got this resolved. And I do from time to time go back onto the game to play some multiplayer matches, even though it's virtually always just TDM, with the occasional war lobby. But anyway, that covers my first non-experience, now into my next one. And this one involves a childhood classic in the form of I Spy Fantasy, which growing up I had 3 I Spy games, Spooky Mansion, which I played the hell out of, Treasure Hunt, which I might talk about in a future one of these, and finally the proper subject, fantasy. And the goal of this game was to go through 3 sets of fantasy worlds, one taking place in space, another underwater, and another in a sandcastle. And each world had a separate goal that you needed to achieve, like needing to find fuel cells for a rocket, or trying to find buried treasure, or trying to save a princess from a dragon. And the way you would work towards achieving these goals was by completing the I Spy challenges throughout the levels. And well, I remember as a kid having so much fun with it. It was like an interactive version of the books. So then why exactly did it land onto this list? Well, that's because I technically never beat the game all the way through. I mean, I remember beating the space level a whole bunch of times and the underwater level maybe a couple times. But when it came to the sandcastle level, well, I was able to beat just about every level except for one. One level that, for some reason, the computer couldn't load properly. And for whatever reason, anytime I would try to choose it, the screen would just go completely black. That level being the crown. Yeah, no, for whatever reason, whenever I chose that level, it just didn't work. And even weirder is I'm pretty sure it didn't even freeze my game. The game would still work perfectly fine, I just wasn't able to see the crown. Like, in other words, I was in the level, but I just couldn't see anything. And yeah, because of this weird, unexplainable glitch, I was never able to beat this section of the game and be able to free the princess from the dragon. So then the question becomes, did I ever manage to come back to this game and finish it? Well, yes, actually. I semi-recently played through the game again, starting off in the space section, then finishing up the underwater section, then finally moving my way back to this one. And well, surprise, surprise, once I did, the first thing I went to was the crown to see if it would work, and there it is, it works. So at the very least, that shows me that this wasn't an issue with the game itself, more the computer that I was playing it on. But anyway, I was finally able to beat this level, as well as the section as a whole. It's just too bad that when I played, I ran into a whole new set of computer problems. But hey, at the end of the day, at least the game worked. Oh, never mind. But anyway, it's time to move on to my third non-experience for this video, it involving the sequel to a reboot of an arcade game. And well, that arcade game is one of my personal favorites, if not my overall favorite, Spy Hunter. It being a game where you endlessly drive down a road while being pursued by enemies, and you have to fight them off with the weapons your car has, like machine guns or rockets or oil slick or the crappy smoke screen. It's a really fun game. Then many years later, in 2001, the game got a modern day reboot where everything was in 3D, there was an actual story and mission objectives that you needed to do now. And well, it was just as fun as the arcade game, and it sold enough to get a sequel. So then if I love this series so much, why is this particular game on this list? That is because I never beaten it, due to me as a kid never being able to figure out how to defeat a certain boss. That being a train that you need to destroy piece by piece. And well, as a kid I just remember not being able to beat it, not knowing what to do in order to make the train fall apart. Or I guess more specifically how to hit the parts that you needed to hit, since the only weapon you had with auto-aim had limited ammo, and the regular weapons always seemed to do nothing, as well as you could never line up your shot perfectly. And well, I just remember as a kid trying to beat this boss over and over again, but I just couldn't, and eventually I just kinda gave up. And well, if I'm being perfectly honest, I was kinda just perfectly fine with never beating this game, since I really didn't like it. Which, just to be brief about that, there were just a bunch of things that this game changed from the first one that I really didn't like. And well, because of that, I was perfectly content with never beating it. So then that brings up the question of, did I ever come back to beat it? And well, honestly, I kinda always wanted an excuse to finally come back and finish this game, and finally put to bed something all the way back from my childhood, as well as play the game again to see if it was truly as bad as I remember it. And well, my excuse finally came in the form of this video series. So I decided to boot the game up one last time and finally finish all the missions. And well, this journey started off with all the levels that I remember beating back in the day. However, replaying them now, I was kind of struck back by how hard the game was. Like how genuinely easy it is to die with how many enemies there are and how little hits you can take. And there not being that many health pickups or refreshment states throughout, and then the game giving you the option of what to use in each mission, and you basically have to figure out what is the best for you. But regardless of all that, I did manage to get back to where I was many years ago. And well, I gotta be honest, after getting back into this boss fight, well, It was another situation of it just being way too hard for me to handle, which is probably the real reason I didn't get this done as a kid. Because seriously, if you start this boss fight wrong, you can immediately lose like half your health. And the fact that you have to stay with it in order to properly hit like the miniguns that are coming off of it. I mean seriously, this whole entire boss fight is just a war of attrition. But I was determined to get this finally done. So I kept my distance, and anytime I died I would experiment with different weapons and found that the rockets were actually best to use. But eventually and finally I would actually end up beating the train. And although I was very happy to do so, my woes weren't completely over with yet. Because although I was surprised how close to the end of the game I was, the last few missions still were pretty damn hard, and I died a good number of more times. But just like with the train, I prevailed and found myself at the final boss. A very bizarre final boss, I might add. I mean, just look at this huge thing. A thing that is described by the game as a mobile city, in which the people inside plan to ride out the apocalypse. More specifically, the melting of the South Pole that would cause the world to flood. But of course, I did not allow that to happen, as I managed to destroy the behemoth, and in turn finally beat the game. Although, to add on to the bizarreness factor, I could have sworn that at one point in my life I had beaten this final boss before, since it was so familiar to me for some reason, or at the very least saw someone on YouTube beat it, especially more so since it's such a weird boss that you kinda won't forget it. But weirdness aside, that covers my third non-experience. Now we're gonna move on to my fourth and final one for this video, as we loop ourselves back to the Grand Theft Auto trilogy. And continuing in order, we find ourselves right in the middle with Vice City. And well, who doesn't love Vice City? It being the 80s fueled nostalgia trip that was a whole lot of fun to play. With the game being completely soaked in neon coloring, there being great fast cars to drive, great 80s music to listen to, and a great protagonist to top it all off. And I always debate about whether I like this more or San Andreas more. But anyway, despite all that, why is this on the list if I loved the game so much and played it so much? And well, the thing I never got to see as a kid was Tommy wearing the 100% t-shirt. Or I guess to put it in plain English, I did not 100% this game. I did beat it, unlike the last entry, but I never fully completed it. But that's not to say that I didn't try. And well, with that being said, this is easily the most tragic out of my 3 GTA non-experiences. That is because I genuinely did go out and do all the missions, all the side content. I bought all the properties and collected all the collectibles. I mean, I virtually did just about everything. So then the question becomes, where exactly did I go wrong? And the answer is, with the stunt jumps. Although I will specify that it was a certain set of stunt jumps, because outside this certain set, I did do the rest. So then which stunt jumps am I talking about? Well, those are the ones that appear during the final film studio mission, where Tommy has to use a bike to jump from rooftop to rooftop. And some of the jumps that you need to do are considered stunt jumps. And well, to be quite frank, this is a fairly difficult mission, since you could so easily fall off your bike and then fall off the roof and then like accidentally kill yourself, and then need to start it all over again. And well, as a kid, I found this mission to be so difficult that I kinda figured out something about it. That being the fact that you can beat it not the intended way. That is because the mission is programmed in a way that you only need to hit the checkpoints in order to proceed in it. Not that you need to specifically hit the checkpoints or go from rooftop to rooftop with a bike. And so because of that, I ended up getting the helicopter from one of my apartments and just flying from checkpoint to checkpoint, which made this mission so much easier. But again, even though I beat the mission, I still had the issue of there being stunt jumps that I didn't get, which then turns into the argument of, aren't there parts in the mission that give you like shortcuts to the roofs? Well, yes there are, but here's another part of tragedy to add on to this non-experience. That being that once I realized my mistake of not getting those stunt jumps, I knew I had to find these entrances. But despite looking for them for so long, I just couldn't find them. I honestly couldn't remember where they were. And it didn't help that my kid self's knowledge of the internet was so limited that I didn't think to just look up where they're located on the map. or where that elevator you ride is, assuming you could still use it after the mission. But anyway, that's where the save file just sat, until the final element of tragedy happened, which was we got a new computer. And since I didn't know how to transfer save data from one computer to the next, it was over. Either that or I didn't even get the opportunity to, because I think that computer broke. But either way, the profile that was so close to 100% completion never was seen to fruition. So then the question becomes, since the many years that this happened, have I ever 100%ed the game or even attempted to? Well, if I'm being completely honest, no I haven't. I mean, I have played through the game again, beating it, but I really never had interest in trying to 100% it again, since I feel my time with the game has kinda passed. You know, I played this game a whole hell of a lot, so now it's time to move on to new stuff. You know, that, and I guess you could call it bitterness, since I did technically 100% this game basically all those years back, and it's only technically not official because of a few stupid stunt jumps. Although having said all that, there is like one scenario I could think of where I would 100% this game again. That being, since I'm an achievement hunter, I would get all the achievements in the definitive edition, one of which obviously being 100%ing the game. Although I don't see myself playing that version of the game in the future. But then again, I'll never know until it does or doesn't happen. But anyway, with that all said, that completes my 4th non-experience for this video, as well as the video as a whole. And well, just like in the first part, this was a fun thing to talk about, as well as a good excuse to finally go back and get some things done that I never did before. And I do plan to do more of these. Or at least a part 3, since it does kind of suck that this is kind of a limited topic since I was only a child for so long. But other than that, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you subscribe for when part 3 eventually comes out. I'll see you guys in the next video, bye for now.